Miss Bankhead, Mr. Marks, and so on. And as everyone was breathing a sigh of relief, Chico said, "You know, I really want to fuck you." And she said, "And so you shall, you old-fashioned boy."
I was born on January 31st, 1902, into the grandeur of Southern aristocracy. My parents were Will and Adelaide Bankhead. My older sister Eugenia arrived a year earlier. Sadly, the joy of her birth was quickly overshadowed by sorrow, as my mother died from chronic peritonitis shortly after I was born. My mother's last words were, "Look after Eugenia. Tallulah will look after herself." I always felt a vague association between my birth and my mother's death. My father, Will, was a prominent politician in Alabama, serving as Speaker of the House. The Bankhead family estate, located in Jasper, Alabama, was a symbol of just how loaded my family was. My father, a member of the Alabama state legislature, baptized me beside my mother's coffin. One of my earliest memories is of my father, gun in hand, saying he'd join my mother in the afterlife. He loved us deeply, but struggled with depression, and often sent my sister and me to live with different relatives. At my aunt's home, I found a friend in Zelda. Both of us were tomboys who loved to get into trouble. I often felt bad about myself, overshadowed by my sister Eugenia's looks and charm. My father liked Eugenia more and often said he wished for a son. To win his love, I became a daredevil, jumping off roofs and doing cartwheels. Zelda would later become famous as Zelda Fitzgerald, the wife of writer F. Scott Fitzgerald. At 5, my father took me to a vaudeville show. I was amazed by the performance. One night after drinking, my father placed me on a table to perform for his friends as they hooted and cheered. Their applause sparked my love for attention. When I was 10, my father sent us to a convent school in New York. I was restless, homesick, and struggled with the strict rules. The other girls, mostly from the North, saw me as a Southern outsider. They didn't like my attempts to make them laugh or join their games. Feeling isolated, my behavior got worse at the end of the term. After the convent, I went to several different schools, but got expelled multiple times for smoking, drinking, and sneaking out to meet boys. Puberty made things worse, and I struggled with acne and weight gain. I spent my free time reading stage and movie magazines, dreaming of becoming an actress like Alla Nazimova and Mary Pickford. When I was 15, my father remarried a woman 20 years younger. I initially mocked my new stepmother, but she had a good heart and took me under her wing. Within a few months, I shed 20 pounds, and the acne on my face disappeared. For the first time, I felt beautiful. I saw my chance to become an actress through a beauty contest in a magazine. The prize was a role in a film. I sent in my photo in a borrowed hat, and Fox stole, but forgot to write my name and address. 3 months later, I saw my picture in the magazine with the headline, "Who is she?" I ran out screaming, "I've won it! I'm going on the stage." My father's objections were mostly financial. He worried about the cost of living in New York and who would look after me. After sulking and threatening a hunger strike, my grandfather and Aunt Louise agreed to support me. I went to New York with their help. In New York, I found out the production was shut down, but I soon got a small part in a romantic comedy. I tore up the $25 check saying it was too delightful, and I was facing immense pressure. The cast resented me for taking the lead role. The British public found my name exotic, and young women flocked to see me. I decided to get my hair fashionably shingled. My fans began cutting their hair and throwing it onto the stage during my performances. I also came to London to find George. When we met, he brought a dog as a peace offering. He made no apologies for deserting me or for his new boyfriend. I didn't mind, though. and often dined with both men. George regularly disappeared for long periods. In London, I met important people like Viola Tree, Audrey Carton, and Olga Lynn. Olga took a maternal interest in my welfare. British actors were not highly paid, and I struggled with large debts. I also couldn't grasp the pound-to-dollar exchange rate. Olga put me on a diet and helped design my wardrobe. Through her, I met all of the society elites. I became friends with Lady Diana Manners Duff Cooper and the Churchill family. Newspaper boss Max Beaverbrook invited me to parties, introducing me to influential people. I proudly introduced my father to these acquaintances during his visit. In one play, I had to invent jokes and perform cartwheels to distract the audience from an unmanageable pet monkey. My most successful performance during this period was in evolving my offstage persona. I worked hard on my repertoire of smart one-liners. My terrible driving skills surely held me back just a bit. I failed to master basic driving and hired taxi drivers to guide me, which probably wasted tons of time. Anyways, I was terrified of going back to a humble life in Jasper. The thought of returning to a simple, unremarkable existence scared me to my core. I had seen and experienced so much more beyond those small-town borders, and I couldn't imagine fitting back into that life. I started drinking regularly, finding solace and escape in alcohol. Parties and social gatherings were my refuge, and alcohol flowed freely, despite prohibition back home in the States. Experimenting with drugs became part of my life, too. Cocaine was everywhere in the circles I moved in, and I found that it gave me a euphoric high and the energy I needed to keep up with the demanding lifestyle. The drug made me feel invincible, making me cocky and helping me get through my auditions and performances. I had numerous affairs with prominent figures in London, both men and women. The thrill of these relationships was intoxicating. One of my first real affairs was with Eva Le Gallienne, a European actress. Our affair lasted a few months, but many of my early relationships were with older women. I was still unsure about men. John Barrymore, a big name in the industry, once offered me a role in his film, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, if I slept with him. I refused. Despite my flirtations and wild ways, I had my boundaries. My Aunt Louise couldn't handle my wild ways and left for Italy. My family decided to trust me on my own, even though the hotel manager said he couldn't look after me and run the hotel at the same time. People said I looked intensely sexual. The actress Jane Cowell said my face was like an evil flower. I was delighted by my beauty and flirted often, but I hadn't engaged in sex yet. I often joked about my father's warning about men and booze, but not about women and cocaine. Through friends, I got a role as an understudy in a major play. When the lead actress was out, I performed well. In early 1921, I got my first lead role in Nice People. My character, Haley, was a new kind of hero, with short skirts, a cigarette habit, and a smart, independent attitude. The deep, throaty catch in my voice delivered every sexual irony and innuendo in the lines. I earned praise as a fine comic actor. I had my first abortion in the mid-1920s with the help of Olga Lynn. The procedure was painful and very dangerous, and I lost a lot of blood. I had 3 more abortions by the time I was 30. Each time the procedures were just as painful and risky. Abortions weren't safe back then. They were done in secret, often with dirty tools and by people who weren't doctors. I went through this because I felt I had no choice. My career was everything to me, and having a child didn't fit into my plans. I was afraid of the scandal and what it would do to my acting work. These decisions were hard, but I kept them to myself and used humor to deal with the pain. In 1925, I wanted a role in the play Rain, based on a Somerset Maugham story. Maugham watched me act but said I didn't have enough personality, so he replaced me. I felt so humiliated that I tried to end my life by swallowing 20 aspirin. I woke up with a bad headache. Not long after, I got a role in Fallen Angels because the lead actress got sick. My funny acting made the audience laugh a lot. As the decade was ending, I decided to go back home. I was almost 30, George was marrying an earl's daughter, and I had no money. Then Paramount offered me $55,000 a week, which was an incredible amount of money. I wrote to my father and left for New York in January 1931. In a year and a half, I made 6 movies and earned a lot of money, but none of the movies were hits. Directors said I didn't look good on screen. They said my eyes looked hooded and lifeless. I was meant for the stage, where I could show off my big personality to an audience. Movies made me feel trapped and suppressed. Even though my movies didn't do well, I had fun in Hollywood. Joan Crawford said everyone loved me, but was also scared of me. I had many sexual adventures, including one with Johnny Weissmuller in a garden, but that's between us. I often talked about my love life and claimed to have had 500 or more lovers. This wasn't just a boast. It was a reflection of how I lived my life, boldly and without shame. I enjoyed relationships with both men and women, making me one of the few openly bisexual figures in Hollywood at the time. Some of my notable lovers included Eva Le Gallienne and Johnny Weissmuller. I wasn't afraid to talk about my sexual exploits, and I often made shocking statements. Once I said in an interview, "I haven't had an affair for 6 months. 6 months too long. I want a man." This caused quite a scandal and sent me back to Broadway. As I passed 50, my demons grew stronger. I drank a quart of bourbon a day and mixed various drugs. I was frantic for sleep and often had friends or servants stay with me all night. My drug habit got so bad that my maid had to tape my wrists to stop me from taking pills. I had serious accidents and psychotic episodes. Orson Welles said I was the most sensational case of aging unkindly. I still kept my sense of humor, often saying, "I'm what's left of her, darling," when asked if I was Tallulah Bankhead. For years, I wished for death. In 1968, I finally succumbed to double pneumonia. My last words were codeine and bourbon.
If you found Tallulah's story intriguing, you'll also enjoy our deep dive into the life of Joan Collins.